The first time Grant Whitaker saw his ex-wife's name on live television, he was standing in the lobby of a private investor dinner, holding a glass of sparkling water he had not touched. Behind him, men in dark suits were laughing near a wall of framed certificates. Beside him, a large screen had been mounted for the evening's presentation. Grant had paid for the room, the flowers, the lighting, and the polished little cards that said Whitaker Hospitality Group in silver letters. Then the screen changed. A local news anchor appeared for the final human interest segment of the evening. Grant barely looked up at first. He was waiting for his own promotional video to play. But then he heard the words that made his hand tighten around the glass. From $300 and a borrowed stove, one mother has built the food truck everyone in Bryan County is talking about. The footage cut to a woman standing inside a cream-colored truck with blue trim. Her hair was tied back. Her sleeves were rolled. Steam rose behind her. A line of customers stretched down the sidewalk. Painted on the side of the truck in careful blue letters were 3 words: Lena's Sunday Table. Grant's face changed before he could stop it. The woman on the screen was Clara Whitaker, though she no longer used his name. The same woman his attorney had called financially dependent. The same woman a judge had been told was too unstable to regain full custody of her own children. The same woman Grant had left with 1 suitcase, no car, no house, no savings, and exactly $300 in an old account his lawyer said was not worth chasing. Then the camera moved closer. On the counter beside Clara sat an old green recipe notebook, its cover cracked, its corners softened from years of use. Grant forgot the room around him. He knew that notebook. For 15 years, it had sat in the kitchen of the house on Bellwether Lane. He had walked past it thousands of times. He had seen Clara open it before dinner parties, church fundraisers, office gatherings, client weekends, charity auctions, and every holiday meal that made people call him generous. He had never opened it himself. Now the notebook was on television. Clara looked into the reporter's camera, not frightened, not bitter, not begging anyone to believe her. She said, "Some people can take your name off paper, but they cannot take the hands that taught you how to begin again." The lobby went quiet. Grant's attorney, Nolan Pierce, was standing 20 feet away near the entrance. He heard it too. He looked at the screen, then at Grant. For 1 second, the 2 men understood the same thing. This was not just a food truck story. This was a door opening, and behind that door was a truth Grant had spent 2 years trying to bury. 6 months earlier, Clara had been standing in a courthouse hallway with a paper cup of water trembling in her hand, while Nolan Pierce told the judge she had no record of stable income, no property, no reliable transportation, no business history, and no suitable home for the children. Nolan's voice had been calm, almost kind, which made it worse. Grant sat at the other table, clean-shaven, gray suit, wedding ring already removed. He did not look at Clara. He looked only at the judge, as if Clara were a problem to be solved, not a woman he had slept beside for 15 years. The children, Jonah and May, were not in the courtroom. Clara was grateful for that. There are some things children should not have to witness, even when those things are about them. The judge granted Grant temporary primary custody until Clara could prove stability. Temporary. That word followed Clara out of the courtroom like a sentence. She packed that afternoon. 1 suitcase, 2 sweaters, 1 pair of black shoes, her grandmother Lena's recipe notebook. A photograph of Lena standing on the porch of a small white house, holding a pie in both hands and smiling like she had never needed permission to belong anywhere. Grant stood in the hallway while Clara came down the stairs. He said 1 sentence. "You were never built for the hard part, Clara." She did not answer. Not because she had no answer, but because if she opened her mouth, something inside her might break where he could see it. At the front door, May's pink rain boots sat crooked beside Jonah's baseball glove. Clara looked at them too long. Grant noticed, stepped forward, and quietly moved the boots aside with his foot, as if even the sight of her children's things belonged to him now. That was the moment Clara understood. He had not only taken the house, He wanted her to feel like she had never truly lived there. She left with the recipe notebook pressed against her ribs. Grant thought she left with nothing. But he had made one mistake. He had never understood what was inside that notebook, and by the time he saw it on live television, it was already too late. Clara spent her first night after the courthouse on the backroom sofa of a flower shop owned by Ruthie Bell, a widow from her old church who had a habit of helping people before they asked. The sofa was narrow. The room smelled of wet stems, refrigerator air, and old coffee. A bucket of white carnations stood near the sink. Clara lay awake until morning, listening to the hum of the cooler and the occasional truck passing outside. At 5:12 a.m., she sat up. Her phone was beside her. There were no messages from Grant, none from the children either. She knew Grant had probably taken their tablets. He would say it was to keep them calm. Grant was very good at using calm words for cruel things. Clara opened the recipe notebook. The first page was written in her grandmother's steady hand. Sunday chicken gravy. Do not rush the onions. Let the pot tell you when it's ready. That sentence was everywhere in the notebook. Let the pot tell you when it's ready. Lena had said it about food, but Clara had learned, much later, that it applied to people too. Pressure revealed what was inside. Time separated what was real from what only looked rich at first boil. Clara turned the pages. There were stains from butter, tomato, coffee, and one old thumbprint in blackberry syrup. There were notes Lena had written in the margins, then notes Clara had added as a young wife, trying to stretch dinner for unexpected guests Grant brought home without warning. Add 2 cups rice if Grant invites bankers again. Make extra biscuits when children are tired. Do not let him rename this sauce. Clara stopped on that line. She had forgotten writing it. It was from 9 years earlier, after Grant hosted his first big private dinner for investors from Halden Ridge Capital, a fictional firm that had been considering him for a hospitality loan project. Clara cooked for 17 people that night. Braised chicken, butter beans, sweet cornbread, peach skillet cake, and the rosemary gravy Grant later called his family signature. His family, not hers. At the dinner, Grant had stood near the fireplace and told a story about tradition, service, and Southern hospitality. Clara had been in the kitchen washing pans. She heard laughter through the wall. She heard applause when Grant said, "Food is memory made visible." That was Clara's phrase. She had said it to him while folding napkins 2 nights before. The next morning, he told her the investors loved their concept. He said they wanted to hear more. He said Clara should be proud. She asked if he told them who cooked. Grant kissed her forehead and said, "Don't be small about this." That sentence had stayed in Clara's body for years. Don't be small. By the time the divorce papers arrived, Grant had spent a decade making her smaller in ways that looked reasonable from the outside. He handled the accounts because he was better with numbers. He put the house in his name because the financing was cleaner. He leased the car through his company because it saved money. He asked her not to work because the children needed consistency. He asked her to sign tax documents while she was stirring soup, permission forms while she was packing lunches, refinancing papers while May had a fever upstairs. Nothing happened all at once. That was the trick. Control rarely enters the room wearing boots. Sometimes it enters carrying groceries, smiling, saying it has everything handled. By the end, Grant had everything handled. The house, the accounts, the car, the business filings, the school contacts, the emergency forms, the insurance, the investment proposal for Whitaker Hospitality Group, and Clara had the kitchen. The kitchen had seemed like a small country then. Now it was the only country that had not exiled her. On the second morning at Ruthie's flower shop, Clara counted her money on the cutting table between bundles of baby's breath. $300. Ruthie came in carrying 2 paper cups of coffee. She looked at the bills without pity, which Clara appreciated. "What can you do with it?" Ruthie asked. Clara looked at the recipe notebook. She did not say she could cook. That felt too small. She said, "I can feed people." Ruthie nodded as if that were a business plan. 3 days later, Clara rented 4 hours in the certified kitchen behind Mercy Road Fellowship, a small church near the edge of town. The kitchen had steel counters, old burners, and a wall clock that ran 7 minutes slow. The church secretary, Mrs. Alma Reed, handed Clara the key and warned her that the left oven door stuck unless lifted first. Clara bought chicken thighs, rice, onions, flour, paper containers, plastic forks, and 1 roll of blue painter's tape. She borrowed Ruthie's folding table. She wrote the menu on cardboard. Sunday chicken over rice, butter beans, cornbread. At 11:30 that Friday, she set up outside the laundry building near the old mill road. Cars passed. People looked. Most kept going. The first man who stopped was a bus driver named Ellis. He bought 1 plate because he said the smell made him miss his mother. He ate it sitting on the curb, then came back and bought 2 more. By the end of the day, Clara had sold 14 plates. Not enough to fix her life, enough to prove she still had one. She wrote every dollar in a spiral notebook Ruthie gave her. Revenue, costs, remaining cash. She wrote in blue ink because Lena had written in blue ink. That evening, Grant called. Clara was sitting on Ruthie's back steps, exhausted, her shoes dusted with flour, her hair smelling of oil and onions. Grant did not ask how she was. He asked if she had considered what all this looked like. He said selling food outside a laundry building could hurt her custody case. He said Jonah had asked why his mother was working on the street. He said May had cried before bed. Clara closed her eyes. Grant knew exactly where to press. Then he said, "You need to stop embarrassing the children." Clara looked down at her hands. The knuckles were dry from washing dishes in the church sink. There was a small burn near her thumb. For 15 years, those hands had fed Grant's guests, raised his children, packed his lunches, polished his image, and built the warmth he sold to others as leadership. She said, "I am not embarrassing them. I am surviving where they can see me." Then she hung up. The next week, she sold 23 plates. The week after that, 31. On the 4th week, she sold out before 2 p.m. But pressure grows wherever hope begins. Grant's attorney filed a supplemental custody note, stating that Clara was operating an unverified roadside food activity, with uncertain income and no long-term stability. The phrase roadside food activity made Ruthie so angry. She slapped the paper against the flower shop counter and crushed 3 lilies by accident. Clara did not get angry right away. She got quiet. That was worse, because when Clara got quiet, she noticed things. She noticed a gray sedan parked across the street from the laundry building 2 Fridays in a row. She noticed it, May, asking whether the church kitchen had big silver tables, even though Clara had never described the kitchen to her. She noticed Grant using exact phrases from conversations Clara had only had with one person. That person was Elise, Grant's younger cousin. Elise had been the only member of Grant's family who still called Clara after the divorce. She brought children's clothes. She asked about the food. She said Grant was wrong. She said she wanted to help. Clara wanted badly to believe her. Loneliness can make a locked door look like shelter if someone knocks gently enough. So Clara told Elise small things, then bigger things: her market schedule, her kitchen rental, her new motion for expanded custody, the reporter who stopped by after buying lunch. Every detail traveled. Clara did not know that yet, but the story had already begun moving toward the screen where Grant would one day see her name. The reporter's name was Nora Vale. She was not famous. She worked for a regional morning show called County Daybreak, the kind of program people watched while making coffee, checking weather, or buttoning school shirts. Nora found Clara by accident. She came to the laundry building because her producer sent her to film a segment about rising utility costs. She smelled chicken gravy before she saw the table. She bought 1 plate, took 2 bites in her car, and came back with her microphone still clipped to her coat. Clara almost said no, not because she feared the camera, but because she knew Grant. Any light that touched her, he would try to call fire. Nora did not push. She left a card. That night, Clara sat in the church kitchen after cleaning, Nora's card on the counter beside Lena's notebook. Mrs. Alma Reed came in to count the offering envelopes for Sunday. She was 72, thin as a broom handle, and sharp enough to make younger people stand straighter. She looked at the card, then at Clara. Some people survive quietly because they are humble, Alma said. Some survive quietly because someone trained them to be afraid of being seen. Don't confuse the two. Clara did not answer. Alma picked up Lena's notebook carefully, as if old paper had bones. Who wrote this? My grandmother. Then maybe she did not write all this down for it to hide in a bag. That sentence stayed with Clara through the night. The next morning, she called Nora. The filming was set for Thursday. By Tuesday evening, Grant knew. Elise had told him from her car outside a pharmacy, her voice low, her guilt wrapped in excuses she had stopped believing. Grant had been paying the legal fees on Elise's late father's estate. He had not exactly threatened her. Grant rarely made threats that could be quoted. He only reminded people what they might lose if they disappointed him. When Grant called Clara that night, his voice was soft. That softness had once fooled her. He said the children were adjusting. He said media attention could confuse them. He said a good mother would protect them from public embarrassment. Clara was standing inside the food truck she did not yet own, because the truck had entered her life 2 days earlier like an answered prayer with bald tires. The truck belonged to Mercy Road Fellowship. Years before, the church youth group had used it for summer lunches. Then the engine failed, the refrigerator died, and it sat behind the fellowship hall under a blue tarp. Pastor Edwin offered Clara a deal. She could rent it for $75 a month if she repaired what she could and kept serving near the church twice a week. A mechanic from the congregation fixed the fuel pump. Ruthie painted over the old lettering. Mrs. Alma sewed blue curtains for the serving window, though Clara said food trucks did not need curtains. Alma said this one did. Clara named it Lena's Sunday table. Now she stood inside that truck, with Grant's voice in her ear telling her to stay unseen. He said, "You are turning this into a performance." Clara looked at the old green notebook on the prep counter. "No," she said. "You did that years ago. I just did the cooking." For the first time, Grant was silent. Clara hung up before he recovered. The next morning, Nolan Pierce sent a letter to County Daybreak. It warned against airing defamatory content related to a private custody matter, marital finances, or Grant Whitaker's business reputation. The letter was cold, professional, and stupid. Before that letter, Nora's segment had been a 3-minute local feature about a mother, a food truck, and family recipes. After the letter, her producer wanted documents. Nora called Clara and asked if there was anything Grant was trying to stop them from seeing. Clara almost said no. Then she remembered the line in the notebook, "Do not let him rename this source." That night, she went through every page. There were recipes, yes, but there were also dates, menus, notes from Grant's investor dinners, names of guests, adjustments for large events, meal counts, grocery costs, phrases Clara had written while helping Grant shape his hospitality pitch. Hospitality is not luxury. It is being remembered. Food is memory made visible. People return where they were fed with dignity. Clara sat on Ruthie's floor with the notebook open and felt something cold move through her. Those phrases were familiar because they were hers, but they were also in Grant's investor deck. Whitaker Hospitality Group had used them in brochures, speeches, dinner menus, and early funding materials. Grant had built an entire public identity around language Clara had written in the margins of a recipe notebook. She had not noticed because women trained to give often mistake theft for appreciation when it wears a husband's face. Then Clara found the missing pages. 3 pages had been cut from the back section with a blade. She stared at the ragged edges. Page 182, page 183, page 184. The pages had contained the original menu and notes for the Holden Ridge dinner, the first one that led to Grant's investor relationship. Clara remembered because Lena had once told her to keep the most important notes in the back, where impatient people never looked. The pages were gone. Grant had opened the notebook. Maybe not often, maybe only once. But once had been enough. The next day, Clara asked Jonah about something carefully during her court-approved visit. They sat at a picnic table outside the community center. May was drawing flowers with a dull red crayon. Jonah, 12 years old, and trying too hard to look unaffected, picked at the edge of his sandwich. Clara asked whether anything from the house kitchen had been moved. Jonah said Dad had cleaned out some drawers. Then May, without looking up from her drawing, said, "He took the green book one night." Clara's breath changed. May kept coloring. "He put papers in his work bag. I saw because I came down for water. He told me not to wake you." Clara did not ask more, not then. Children are not evidence drawers. They should not have to carry adult crimes in their small hands. But that night, Clara wrote the date in her spiral notebook. The trap tightened quickly after that. At the next custody review, Nolan Pierce framed Clara's growing food truck attention as instability disguised as ambition. He presented photographs of the truck, screenshots of customer posts, and copies of Nora's interview request. He argued that Clara's life was becoming public, unpredictable, and unsuitable for children who needed privacy. Grant sat perfectly still. He did not look smug. That was part of his skill. He looked concerned. When Clara's lawyer, Mara Sloan, presented income records, kitchen permits, truck rental receipts, and customer letters, the judge listened but did not rule. She extended the current arrangement for 30 more days and requested a home inspection, a business income summary, and evidence that Clara's work hours would not interfere with parenting. 30 days. Grant walked past Clara in the hallway afterward. He said quietly, "You should have taken the settlement." The settlement had offered Clara limited visitation, no claim to the hospitality business, and a small monthly support payment that would vanish if she challenged Grant publicly. Clara looked at him. For years, she had measured her words to keep peace. Now peace was gone. Only truth remained, she said. "I did take something, Grant. Notes." His eyes flickered. Small, fast, almost nothing. But Clara saw it, and for the first time since he took the children, Grant looked afraid. The television crew arrived before sunrise. Clara was already in the church kitchen, onions sweating in butter, chicken browning in 2 deep pans, rice steaming under clean towels. Nora asked only a few questions at first. Mostly, the camera watched Clara work. No performance, no tears forced for the lens, just hands. Hands measuring salt by instinct. Hands lifting the oven door the way Alma taught her. Hands turning the fragile pages of Lena's notebook. Hands pausing over the place where 3 pages had been cut out. Nora's cameraman noticed. He zoomed in. Clara did not explain everything on camera. She only said the notebook belonged to her grandmother, then her mother for a short time, then her. She said the recipes had fed weddings, funerals, sick neighbors, new babies, tired workers, and once, a room full of men who later forgot who cooked. That line made Nora look up. Clara did not say Grant's name. She did not need to. The first version of the segment was beautiful, but incomplete. It showed a woman rebuilding. It showed dignity. It showed food. It showed customers who spoke about Clara as if she were a place they could return to. Then Nora received a package. No return address. Inside were photocopies of 3 notebook pages. Page 182, page 183, page 184, the missing pages. They showed the full menu from Grant's first investor dinner. Clara's handwriting filled the margins. Portions, costs, timing, guest reactions, and the original phrases later used in Grant's pitch materials. At the bottom of page 184 was one line circled twice. "If this ever becomes a business, do not let them sell warmth without naming the woman who made it." Nora called Clara immediately. Clara sat down when she heard. Only 3 people could have had those pages: Grant, Nolan Pierce, or Elise. The answer came the next morning. Elise appeared outside the food truck before opening, wearing sunglasses though the sky was cloudy. She looked smaller than Clara remembered, as if guilt had been eating her from the inside and leaving the bones. She admitted everything in broken pieces. Grant had asked her to report Clara's plans. He had paid one estate bill, then another. Then he reminded her what would happen if she stopped helping. She told him about the reporter, the kitchen, the custody filings, the truck. But the notebook pages were different. Years earlier, Elise had been at the house on Bellwether Lane for a family dinner. She had seen Grant remove pages from Clara's notebook after everyone went to bed. She did not understand why then. She only knew it felt wrong. So when Grant threw the copied pages into his office trash after scanning them, Elise took them. She kept them in a shoebox for 9 years. Clara listened without interrupting. Elise cried once, but Clara did not comfort her. Not because Clara was cruel, but because not every confession deserves immediate relief. Some people confess because truth burns. Let it burn a little. Elise handed over her phone. 46 text messages from Grant. Updates on Clara's schedule. Questions about her income. Instructions to find out whether the reporter knew about the divorce. A message that read, "Make sure she doesn't mention the old notebook. That would confuse the business record." That sentence changed everything. Nora's producer delayed the segment by 2 days. Mara Sloslon filed an emergency motion. Grant's attorney tried to block the broadcast. He failed. The station removed direct custody details, but kept the documents, the notebook pages, the public business materials, and Clara's own words about invisible labor. The segment aired on a Thursday night. Grant was at the investor dinner when it began. The room watched the story unfold in 3 layers. First, Clara's comeback. Then, the missing notebook pages. Then, the side-by-side comparison. On the left, Clara's handwritten phrase, "People return where they were fed with dignity." On the right, Whitaker Hospitality Group's investor slogan, "Guests return where they are fed with dignity." The room did not gasp. Real shock is often quieter than that. It settled over people like dust. Then Nora's voice explained that the food truck owner had spent years cooking unpaid meals that helped shape a hospitality venture now seeking expansion funding. She explained that documents raised questions about who created the original menu concepts and language used in early investor materials. Grant stood in the lobby, unable to move. The screen showed Clara in the truck, Lena's notebook open beside her. Nora asked what Clara wanted people to understand. Clara did not look triumphant. She looked tired, steady, and finally visible. She said, "I do not need credit for every meal I cooked, but I will not let someone call my life's work his brand." That line ended the segment. Then the screen cut to black. For a moment, the investor dinner remained silent. One of the senior partners, a woman named Evelyn Marr, set down her glass and walked toward Grant. She had eaten Clara's food years earlier at Bellwether Lane. She remembered the gravy. She remembered Clara bringing out extra biscuits for her husband, who had low blood sugar and was too embarrassed to ask for more food. Evelyn looked at Grant and said only one thing. "Did she write the original proposal language?" Grant's mouth opened. No answer came. That silence was enough. By morning, the investment meeting was cancelled. 2 clients requested document reviews. Nolan Pierce stopped returning Grant's calls for 6 hours, then sent a message advising him not to contact Clara directly. But the real reckoning came in family court. Mara Sloan entered the missing pages, Elise's text messages, the station's document comparison, Clara's business records, her kitchen lease, her truck rental agreement, and the home inspection report. Grant's side argued that the business dispute had nothing to do with custody. The judge disagreed. Not because Clara's food truck had become popular, not because Grant had used her phrases, but because the messages showed a pattern of interference, monitoring, and intentional pressure during an active custody matter. The judge read one message aloud. "Make sure she doesn't look too stable before the hearing." Clara closed her eyes. There it was. Not hidden in tone, not disguised as concern. Plain. Grant had not merely doubted her stability. He had tried to prevent it. The judge transferred primary physical custody to Clara pending final review, expanded Grant's visitation under supervision for 90 days, and ordered both parents into a revised parenting evaluation. Grant did not shout. He did not break down. He looked offended, as if consequences were a clerical error. When Clara walked out of the courthouse, Jonah and May were waiting with Ruthie near the front steps. May ran first. Jonah hesitated for 1 second, because 12-year-old boys often do. when their hearts are too full for their bodies. Then he crossed the space and folded himself into his mother's arms. Clara held them both. No speech, no camera, no victory pose. Just a woman on courthouse steps holding the two people she had been told she was too unstable to mother. Across the street, Grant watched from beside his car. For the first time he saw what he had not been able to put in his name. And for the first time, it did not come toward him when he called. The public consequences did not arrive like lightning. They came like bills, slowly, repeatedly, with dates attached. Grant's expansion funding collapsed within a week. Evelyn Marr's firm requested a full audit of Whitaker Hospitality Group's origin materials. 2 partners withdrew from the restaurant project. A private dining client cancelled a 6-month contract after asking whether any of the menus had been created by Clara. Grant tried to frame it as a misunderstanding, but misunderstanding is hard to sell when a missing notebook page sits beside your brochure like a mirror. Nolan Pierce advised settlement. Grant hated that word when it applied to him. He agreed only when Mara Sloan prepared a civil claim over unpaid labor contribution, intellectual property related to menu language, and misrepresentation in business materials. Clara did not want a long war. She wanted custody secured, her name protected, and enough money to stabilize the children. The settlement gave Clara a modest but meaningful share from the early hospitality concept. Full ownership of Lena's Sunday table, formal recognition that several menu concepts and hospitality phrases originated from Clara Hale, and enough back support to lease a small 2-bedroom apartment above a closed bakery near the town square. It was not a mansion. It was better. It had morning light in the kitchen. The children chose the smaller bedroom because it had a window seat. May put her stuffed animals there. Jonah kept his baseball glove on the sill. Clara hung Lena's photograph above the stove, not too high, because she wanted the children to see her grandmother's face when they came in hungry. The food truck grew, but not wildly. Clara did not become famous overnight in the cheap way people imagine fame. She became trusted. That was slower and stronger. Office workers came on Tuesdays. Mill workers came on Fridays. Church families came after Sunday service. Mothers bought extra cornbread to take home. Elderly men sat on the curb with plates balanced on their knees and said very little because the food had taken them somewhere private. Nora's segment kept circulating online, but Clara refused every interview that wanted to turn her pain into spectacle. She said yes only once more, to a follow-up about small food businesses and unpaid family labor. She spoke carefully. She did not call herself a victim. She did not call herself a hero. She said many people, especially women, build value in ways no ledger records until someone decides to erase them. Then she went back to work. Grant moved out of Bellwether Lane before Christmas. Not because Clara took it from him, but because he could no longer afford the payments after the investment collapse. The house sat empty for 2 months. The big kitchen, where Clara had cooked hundreds of meals, looked strange without steam on the windows. Grant had thought ownership meant possession, but rooms remember who gave them life. On a cold Saturday in January, Grant came to the truck. Clara saw him from the serving window before he reached the line. He looked thinner, not broken, exactly. Men like Grant often mistake humiliation for transformation, but they are not always the same thing. He waited behind 6 customers. That surprised her. When he reached the window, he looked past her at the notebook on the counter. Clara had started keeping it there during service, inside a clear protective cover, not as a prop, as a witness. Grant asked for Sunday chicken. Clara served him the same portion as everyone else. Rice first, chicken, gravy, 1 biscuit. He held the plate but did not move away. For a second, Clara thought he might apologize. Instead, he said, "You know I never meant for it to go that far." There it was. The smallest possible confession. Not I was wrong. Not I hurt you. Only a complaint about distance, as if cruelty had walked there by itself. Clara looked at him through the serving window. Behind him, the line waited. Behind her, the pot simmered. Above the stove, Lena's photograph watched over the truck. Clara said, "Grant, It went exactly as far as you carried it. He looked down at the plate. There was nothing left for him to control in that moment. Not the line, not the story, not the woman, not the children watching from a small table inside the truck, doing homework while their mother worked. May glanced up once, then went back to her spelling words. Jonah did not look up at all. That hurt Grant more than anger would have. Anger still reaches. Indifference closes the door. Grant paid $7 and stepped aside. He sat alone on a bench near the square and ate the food Clara had made. People walked past him toward the truck. Some recognized him. Most did not. The world had a way of moving on from men who believed it could not. Inside the truck, Clara turned to the next customer. By spring, Lena's Sunday table had a regular route, a small catering calendar, and a waiting list for weekend events. Clara hired Ellis, the bus driver who had bought the first plate, after he retired from the transit company. Ruthie handled flowers for catered tables. Mrs. Alma kept the church kitchen schedule, like a general preparing for battle. Elise came once to apologize properly, not with tears first, with accountability. She brought printed copies of every message, every date, every payment Grant had used to pressure her. She told Clara she had already given Mara the full record. Then she said she knew forgiveness was not something she could request like a receipt. Clara thanked her for the documents. That was all. Sometimes dignity means not pretending a wound has closed, just because the person who made it is tired of looking at it. The final custody order came in late April. Primary custody remained with Clara. Grant received structured visitation, parenting conditions, and a warning from the court that interference would change the arrangement further. The judge's order mentioned stability, community support, documented income, and the emotional well-being of the children. It did not mention Lena's notebook, but Clara knew. That notebook had done what legal papers had refused to do at first. It had remembered her. On the first Sunday after the final order, Clara closed the truck early. She took Jonah and May to the apartment above the bakery. They carried groceries up the stairs together. May complained about the heavy rice bag. Jonah pretended not to be tired. Clara let them complain because ordinary complaints are a blessing after months of fear. In the kitchen, she opened Lena's notebook to the first page. Sunday chicken gravy. Do not rush the onions. Let the pot tell you when it's ready. May read the sentence aloud and asked what it meant. Clara thought about Grant, about the courthouse, about the missing pages, about the truck, about the long line of people who had not known they were helping her build a case simply by coming back for food. She said, "It means some things cannot be forced. You give them heat, time, and truth. Then they show you what they are." Jonah set 3 plates on the table. May folded napkins badly and proudly. Clara stirred the pot. The apartment filled with the smell of onions, butter, pepper, and something sweet underneath that neither child could name yet, but one day would remember when they were older and life had made them hungry in ways food could not fix. They ate by the window as evening settled over the square. No mansion, no polished dining room, no man at the head of the table claiming credit for warmth he did not create. Just a mother, 2 children, an old green notebook, and a pot that had finally told the truth. Some people think power is having your name on the house, the car, the account, the business card, and the contract. But there is another kind of power. The kind that lives in what you know how to do when every paper says you have nothing. The kind that lives in recipes, habits, patience, memory, and hands that keep working even after the world calls them empty. Clara's story is fictional, but the question inside it is real. How many people have built families, businesses, reputations, and entire lives without ever seeing their names written on what they helped create? And if someone tried to erase your name from everything, what part of you would still remain impossible to take? Share your thoughts in the comments. And if you want more emotional stories about dignity, betrayal, hidden truth, and quiet strength, subscribe for the next story.